Welcome to A Changed Life. This is a podcast about choosing differently, how you think, how you relate, and how you lead yourself. Here we focus on the inner shifts that create real momentum and open up what's possible next. Have you ever driven home, pulled into the driveway, turned off the car, and then realized that you remember almost nothing about that drive? You did it. You stopped at the lights, you made the turns, you got yourself home safely. But if I asked you to describe the third intersection or the color of the car in front of you, you'd probably come up with nothing. Not because there's anything wrong with you. It's just because your body was driving and your mind was somewhere else. And a mind that is somewhere else does not record. So now I want you to imagine a brain that lived like that, not for one drive, but for months, maybe years, even decades. That's what we're talking about today. And if you have been betrayed, this episode might explain something that has been driving you crazy, why the story keeps changing, why the details don't line up, why every retelling is just a little bit different, and why that might not mean what you've been told it means. Welcome to A Changed Life podcast. I am Ilyse Craft. I am so happy that you're here. And this show is about helping you stop rehearsing the life that you've had and start building the one that's waiting for you. So, last episode, which was called You Don't Need All the Information to Heal, I opened up about my own D-Day. I told you what I remembered. The wind and the sweatshirt and what I don't, which is basically the entire timeline after that. And I made the case that the betrayed mind, the betrayed brain, the flooded brain, it doesn't record everything. That the gaps in your own memory aren't a flaw of any kind. They're a nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems do. So if you haven't heard that one yet, go back one episode and start there. That will be the foundation for what we're talking about in this episode and the next one. Today, we're going to look at that other brain in the room, the brain that was living the double life. And before I say one more word, let me put the same thing on the table that I did in the last episode. You may have been taught something very different from what I'm about to share. And I am not here to convince you. I promise you. I'm sharing my experience, what I've seen in the individuals and the couples that I've worked with, and what I saw from inside a large betrayal recovery coaching company over and over and over and over again, real situations. So my only ask is that you listen for resonance. Notice if something lands as true for you and ask yourself, what might happen and what might open up in your healing if it does? One more thing. Everything I'm about to say is an explanation. It is not an excuse. Those are two completely different things, and I will draw that line again before we're done today, and I'll draw it in ink. Because understanding how a brain works never makes betrayal okay. It just might change what you do next. So let's go inside that splintered brain. Think about what a person is actually managing while they are deceiving someone they live with, they may work with, that they love. They're running their real life, quote unquote, real life, the job, the kids, the dinner conversations, the family plans, the appointments, all of that, and also just ordinary days. They're running the hidden life, the other relationship, the secret behavior, the secret accounts, whatever it might be. They're running the cover stories, and cover stories are their own full-time job because a lie isn't one sentence. A lie is inventory. Who was told what? Which version went to which person? What has to stay consistent with what? They're covering their tracks, deleting, timing, explaining, adjusting. And underneath all of that, all of it, they're managing shame, pushing it down all day long, because if they actually felt it, they couldn't keep it going. So now here's the question that changes everything. What kind of recordings, and when I'm saying recordings, I'm talking about memory recordings. What kind of recordings do you think that brain was making? So let's go back to the drive home. You couldn't describe one intersection from a 15-minute drive because your attention was split between the road and your thoughts. That's 2 tracks, the road and your thoughts. The deceiving brain is running 5 or 6 tracks all at once, every day, for months, for years, for decades. Real life, secret life, the stories, the tracking, the covering up, the shame. That mind is splintered. And a splintered mind does not file clean records. It can't. It was never fully present anywhere, so it never fully recorded anything. So now let's come forward in time. Okay, discovery happens, D-Day. And we sit that person down and we say, tell us everything, every date, every detail, what was said, what you felt, what you did, in the order. And the whole model of that discovery rests on one assumption, that somewhere in that person's head, there is a complete, accurate file. And the only question is whether they'll hand it over. But what if the file was never made? And that is not a small question there. That's the whole thing. Because if the file was never made, then the gaps and the inconsistencies aren't automatically deception. Some of them are just what happens when a splintered brain tries to reconstruct a life it never fully recorded. I want to tell you how I learned this, because I didn't learn it from a textbook or a training. I learned it watching men in recovery. I have worked with a lot of men doing this work. And here's something that I saw over and over and over. A man will sit in a meeting, in a group, in a 12-step, in some sort of community type environment. And it's not his turn to talk, but another man is sharing his story. And in the middle of someone else's story, he realizes something. A memory just surfaced. Something he never disclosed, something that in some cases he had sworn up and down wasn't there, because as far as he knew, it wasn't. He wasn't purposely leaving it out. He didn't remember it until another man's story reached in and pulled it out of his memory. So here's the simple science of this. Memory needs a cue. So think about this. And this probably happened to every single person that will ever listen to this podcast in all of time. You're walking into a room and you forgot why you came in the room. And then you walk back to where you started thinking about going into the room, and you suddenly remember. There was nothing hiding. Your brain just needed the cue. And the original room, that was the cue. Someone else's story can do the same thing for a buried memory. It hands the brain the cue that it was missing. So now let's think about what that means. If those men were strategically hiding those memories, they would stay hidden. You don't accidentally reveal what you're carefully, purposefully concealing. The memories surface because it was never available to them until that moment. And half the time, the man is as stunned as anyone else. But here's what the standard model does with that moment. New information after disclosure equals deception. Case closed. He's still lying. Now we start over. And I have watched what this does to couples. I used to work inside that model in the industry. And I believed in full disclosure. I did. I supported it. And then I watched dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times as the full disclosure turned out not to be full. more came, and more came after that. And every new piece of information landed on the betrayed partner like a brand new D-Day, because the process promised that the file would be complete. The word full, a full disclosure, is the setup. So the couple gets trapped in a loop. Interrogate, find an inconsistency, feel betrayed again, interrogate harder. And the cruelest part of the whole thing is that the loop looks like it's working because there's another inconsistency to find. There's always another one to find. The thing is that there's always going to be another inconsistency to find. Not because the lying never ends, but because the file was never complete on either side of the table. Your memory has gaps because your brain was flooded, right? So if we go back to the experience of the betrayed partner and the story that I shared about my own D-Day, my brain was flooded. I don't remember who I spoke to, when, first, second, third. I don't remember. I was flooded. So now you have two incomplete files, and they will never reconcile into one clean timeline, no matter how many rounds you go. The process manufactures the very distrust it promised to resolve. And I have to say that again. The process, the full therapeutic disclosure process, manufactures the very distrust it promises to resolve. And I finally saw that clearly. There was no unseeing it, and that's when I stopped buying into it. Now, the line, because I promised you the line earlier, and this matters more than anything else that I will say today. Everything I described so far is about a brain that couldn't record everything. That's a different person than the one who knows exactly what happened in a given situation and is choosing right now not to tell you, hedging their bet, hoping that they can manage the story instead of telling the truth. That person isn't confused. That person doesn't have a faulty memory. That person doesn't have a missing file. They are actively deciding what you get to know and what you don't. And here's the part that is worth naming very clearly. That person still has a splintered brain because the deception is still running. He's still managing the real life and the cover story and the shame, which means he is still activated. Still, in the language a lot of my clients use, he is still in his addiction. Because that's what active deception is. One person managing another person's reality without their consent. So this episode is not about him. If that's where you are, if you're watching someone manage you instead of choose you, nothing in today's teaching is asking you to excuse that or to explain it away. Watching behavior instead of auditing memory only works when the behavior is actually there to watch. They're coming toward you consistently, not performed for one conversation and then back to managing you the next day. This is for the ones who are legitimately showing up, consistently doing the work, choosing you and the truth even when it costs them. And you are still finding it hard to find your way back to anything that resembles trust. That gap between what you know intellectually and what your body will actually let you feel, it is real. And it's exactly what we're here to close, that gap. Everything I described explains gaps, not from you, not from anyone about anything. The gap in their story is not automatically an indicator of a liar. And here's the part that I really want you to take with you today. It is not an indicator that healing can't happen. Some of those inconsistencies may be exactly what an honest, splintered brain produces when it tries to reconstruct a life it never fully recorded. And some may not be. The way to know is not another round of questions about the past. The way to know is watching which way they move in the present. Do they move toward you offering or around you managing. That shift from auditing their memory to watching their behavior is not about lowering your standards. It's actually raising them. Memories cannot be verified. Behavior can. You're trading a test that nobody can pass for a test only an honest person can. So here's what I would love for you to sit with this week. Where did you find resonance today? Did anything about the splintered brain explain something that you've been carrying or holding on to? And here's the bigger question. What would open up for you if you stopped auditing that file and started watching the direction? What energy comes back into your life? What energy comes back into the relationship? What becomes possible in your healing when the changing details stop meaning what you thought they meant? So sit with those, journal them, talk through them with somebody that you trust. And in the next episode of this series, I'm going to finish this because if full disclosure, as we know it, asks for what the brain can't give, the question is, what should disclosure look like instead? And I will answer that. It's a way of telling the story that people can actually do honestly and a way to handle what surfaces later so it doesn't blow everything up that you've already walked through. I've watched it work. That's what we'll dive into next time. So if someone that you love is stuck in this loop, replaying the inconsistencies, send them this episode. Send it to them. Have them listen to it. Have them listen to the one before this so that they'll have the foundation and then they can move on to this one and then listen to the one that's coming after this. I am Ilyse Craft. This is a changed life, and your changed life isn't waiting on their memory. It really never was. I'll see you next time. If something in today's episode resonated with you, you'll find a link in the show notes to book a free consultation call. Or you can visit ElyseCraft.com to explore my programs and free resources. Nothing changes until you do. And when you do, everything does. This is a changed life. Not all at once, but for good.